So as a lot of us know at this point, Man of Tomorrow is set to be the next installment in James Gunn's Superman saga. And even though Gunn has come out several times and said that this is technically the Superman sequel, but it's not necessarily Superman 2, Superman obviously still plays a massive role in this movie and is one of the leads. The co-lead of this movie is Superman's arch nemesis Lex Luthor, and both of them will actually be teaming up to face another Superman villain, Brainiac. Now, because of the things that I just mentioned, even though Gunn has said multiple times that technically this isn't Superman 2 and isn't a direct sequel, a lot of people are treating this movie as such. And while I can understand why someone would treat this movie that way, it still isn't the best thing to do considering what the creator of this movie is literally telling us. With that being said, we know that a lot of other heroes are going to appear in this film, such as the Justice Gang and Supergirl, but it's also now being rumored that Wonder Woman might actually be being cast for this movie, which has now caused some people to complain about this movie quote-unquote being overstuffed or this no longer being a Superman story. And in this video, we're going to be going over why all of these heroes appearing actually does nothing to affect the quality of the story. But very quickly, before we get into the video, if you guys do enjoy the content, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. It would mean a lot. Diving right into the topic, let's first address where the rumors of Wonder Woman came from. About 5 days ago, Apocalyptic Horseman over at Nexus Point News actually revealed that a new female hero was joining the cast of Man of Tomorrow and that they were currently looking for the role. Before I go any further, I just want to point out that Apocalyptic Horseman is a very reputable source. Like every DCU scoop that he's dropped, he's pretty much been right on the money. So that's why whenever he says something, a lot of fans pretty much take it as word. With that being said, the reason why a lot of people think that this is Wonder Woman is because of the character description that was given. And that description is A, that she's a female hero, which rules out any female villains. B, that she's described as being in her late 20s, which would be perfect around David Cornsweet's Superman, who's in his early 30s. C, she's also described to be a warrior and has a edge to her, which already in itself sounds like Wonder Woman considering her backstory and mythos. And D, probably the one that gives it away, is the fact that they are looking for a taller actress to play this role, and they need that actress to have a strong physique. With that being said, this description pretty much narrows it down to at most 3 characters. And those 3 characters are Wonder Woman, Big Barda, and Maxima. Starting with Maxima, the reason why I don't think that Maxima is likely is specifically because of the fact that this description goes out of its way to describe the character as a hero. And if you know anything about Maxima, you know that she in fact does not start off as a hero unless they're going to change that aspect of her character in this movie. Or it could in fact be a slight misinterpretation on Apocalyptic Horseman's end, and it's not actually a female hero, rather just a female character. If that is the case, and it is in fact a misinterpretation on Apocalyptic Horseman's end, then Maxima becomes a lot more likely considering she's already had ties to Brainiac in the source material. And the story that I'm specifically referencing is Panic in the Sky, in which Brainiac actually has Maxima aboard with him, helping him after he quite literally just destroyed her planet. And if I'm being completely honest, I do think that Gunn is pulling heavy inspiration from Panic in the Sky because of the fact that this is a Superman versus Brainiac movie that's still going to be an ensemble film, which is basically what that comic is. Even though it's Superman versus Brainiac at its core, there's still a lot of heroes that join the fight to help Superman in that story. However, it gets tricky because Wonder Woman also helps Superman in that story. So even if this is Maxima, there still would be a possibility that this could also just be Wonder Woman because of the fact that if Gunn is pulling from that story, Wonder Woman does appear and it would make sense for him to pull her into this live action movie because it would be comic accurate. So again, specifically because Apocalyptic Horseman said female hero and he's usually 100% right about a lot of the things that he reports, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and assume that this is a female hero, ruling out Maxima, because I just don't see why they would make her a hero to begin with when it would just kind of jeopardize her entire character. As far as Big Barda, I think that she also fits the description relatively well. The only issue that I have with Big Barda showing up is I just don't see why a character like Barda would show up before Wonder Woman or Batman to help Superman. And sure, you can make the same argument for Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific, and Hawkgirl in Superman 2025. However, the movie goes out of its way to explain to you that the reason why they are helping is because they're a part of the Justice Gang, which is a team that operates in Metropolis. And if you know anything about Big Barda, she usually isn't on teams unless it's the Birds of Prey, and occasionally helping the Justice League, but it wouldn't be something that would just be a casual thing for her to do. Now, you could make the argument that they're putting her in this movie to kind of soft launch her for the Mr. Miracle animated series that's going to be set within the DCU. However, you could also make that same argument for Wonder Woman, who's not only getting a prequel show in Paradise Lost, but also getting her movie fast-tracked right now, and it's being written by Anna Nogueira. And at this point in time, if you're James Gunn in DC Studios, the characters that you absolutely should be soft launching is Wonder Woman and Batman, the rest of your trinity. So to me, that just makes way more sense than Barda showing up. On top of this, Apocalyptic Horseman, who again is very reliable, also straight up just said that even though it's not confirmed that this is Wonder Woman, he does very much think that it's Wonder Woman. So taking all of that into account, let's go with the idea that Wonder Woman is going to appear in this movie. Again, this is not confirmed, but we're just going with it for the sake of the video. Is this a bad idea, and should you guys be complaining? No, you should not be. And here's why. Since the DCU was created, we knew that we were going into a world that had metahumans and heroes existing for a very long time before we actually saw it at the point that we're currently at. Meaning that characters like Wonder Woman, Batman, Green Lanterns, all of those types of characters already exist and are operating in their own corners of this world. And given that we have that pre-established context and we know that heroes have been heroing for quite some time, it would almost be weird if other heroes didn't show up to help Superman during a planetary crisis. And let's face it, Brainiac is in fact a planetary crisis. Like, that just is what it is. And if James Gunn has already written characters and teams like the Justice Gang showing up to help Superman, at some point, like, we're gonna have to see Wonder Woman and Batman also pitch in, because you would assume that they're at least friends or know of each other at this point in time. It's honestly very hard for me to believe that Superman has a better relationship with Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific, and Hawkgirl than he does with Wonder Woman and Batman at this point in the DCU. That honestly would be a very interesting creative choice, and I don't think that James Gunn is making that creative choice. James Gunn has in fact teased that Superman may in fact already have a relationship with Batman that we just haven't seen yet.
Speaking of The Dark Knight, there are 10,000 things that you can't answer about that, but what I love about this movie is oftentimes seeing Superman's reaction to things, because he is so human that even though he is Superman, he has a very human reaction to things. What do you think his reaction is going to be the first time he sees a man dressed up as a bat?
Well, first of all, we don't know he hasn't already seen a man dressed up as a bat. So
Tell me more, James Gunn.
So again, based on that clip, it's very possible that DCU Superman already knows the DCU Batman. And if he's already met the DCU Batman, odds are he's probably also met the DCU Wonder Woman, which means that James Gunn could very naturally fit her into the script without it feeling like she's shoehorned in or just showing up just for the sake of showing up. And honestly, if we're at the point in which Wonder Woman's going to show up in this film, I don't see a universe in which the DCU Batman just doesn't show up in this film either. Because if Brainiac is going to be such a threat that Wonder Woman feels the need to come all the way from Themyscira to help Superman in Metropolis, I don't see why Batman wouldn't feel the need to go across the bay to help Superman in the neighboring city. This would also help solve the issue of introducing the DCU Batman before Brave and the Bold. A lot of fans, including myself, have been complaining because of the fact that we have to wait at least 3 years to get the DCU Batman in his own solo film because of Matt Reeves' The Batman Part 2. And while I understand that to them it's counterproductive to release 2 Batman movies within the same year or the same 6 months or whatever they said, I personally, if I was James Gunn, would have still prioritized my Batman over Matt Reeves's. I'm not saying that the Reevesverse should have been canceled, because we all know that the Reevesverse is really good content. That could have stayed going, but I still would have wanted my Batman to come out at least right after Superman 2025. So that way we'd be one step closer to having the main pillars of this DCU already established. And this also would have helped put to bed any ideas about a merger. That being said, Man of Tomorrow is the perfect opportunity to solve this issue, because you can soft introduce the DCU Batman in this movie. And honestly, this isn't something that's out of the realm of possibility, because James Gunn himself has already said that we could in fact see the DCU Batman before Brave and the Bold.
Is Brave and the Bold when you think we'll see that Batman for the first time?
I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
Now, to be fair, another project that the DCU Batman could be appearing in that isn't Man of Tomorrow is Clayface. However, based on everything that we've heard about Clayface so far, I really don't think that the DCU Batman is going to appear, specifically because of the fact that Mike Flanagan himself said that he didn't have any idea what the plan was for the DCU Batman when he wrote the script. So I just don't see him having the opportunity to fit DCU Batman into that script. With that being said, this now begs the question, is Man of Tomorrow going to be overstuffed? And this again is a complaint that I'm seeing so far from a lot of people in the community. And again, I just want you guys to remember, James Gunn never said that this was the actual Superman sequel. In fact, all he's ever said is that it's the semi-sequel and that Superman plays a very large role, and he's been very consistent on that. So I don't understand the argument of this film being overstuffed when this film was never intended to be a Superman solo film to begin with. And I've also seen some people say things like, oh, well, Superman can fight Brainiac by himself in the comics, comics, and honestly, that's all dependent upon what kind of threat Brainiac is posing at that specific point in time. For example, in Superman Brainiac by Jeff Johns, Superman pretty much does that by himself, however, he still has the help of Supergirl, so it's not really by himself. But Brainiac in that story is equipped with obviously his ship that houses his bottled cities and his weaponry that he comes with to destroy planets. You then have other Brainiac stories like Panic in the Sky, in which he had Warworld as well as his alien ship that also destroys planets. Because Brainiac came a lot more equipped, Superman recruited other heroes to help him. And again, because this is a live action adaptation that isn't going to directly copy and paste the comics, even though it's adapting certain comics, I can definitely see James Gunn making this Brainiac a much larger threat than normally seen in the comics, so that it makes sense for the other heroes to come and help Superman. So a very realistic way I can see this playing out is Superman and Lex Luthor confronting Brainiac on his ship, while the other heroes are on the ground level fighting off the robots that Brainiac has sent out to wipe out civilians and gain knowledge. As far as someone like Batman, because of the intellect that he carries, I could also see him being this movie's Mr. Terrific, meaning that he would play a similar role that Mr. Terrific did in Superman 2025. And this would make sense considering that the dynamic between Batman and Superman in this universe should be them being relatively close friends. And again, if you've been watching my content, you know that I have a theory that this movie is going to set up a world's finest film with Batman and Superman. So personally, to me, this just makes sense. Now, with fans speculating that this may be the case, we're obviously now getting a lot of comparisons to BVS, with people saying that this will just be a BVS copy or a rehash of what happens in BVS. And no disrespect to any of those people, but that's probably one of the dumbest things that I've ever heard in my life, specifically because the entire premise of these two movies are completely different. BVS is Batman and Superman at each other's throats for the entire 2.5-hour movie up until the very end where they team up to fight Doomsday, and Wonder Woman just happens to be there. Sure, you can argue that she's integrated throughout the film, but she's kind of just there just to be there. She doesn't really do anything or add anything to the plot for her appearances before the actual fight at the end. She's kind of just walking around, looking attractive, stealing artifacts. She really has no major role in the actual plot of things, which is why people felt like she was shoehorned in. Not to mention, the DCEU also wasn't built upon the pretense of there actually being metahumans that already existed prior to Superman. As for Man of Tomorrow, the premise is very simple. Superman and Lex Luthor have to put their differences to the side to fight a much larger threat, that threat being Brainiac, which is a planetary threat, which makes sense for other heroes to help and join the fight. This isn't Batman versus Superman. Batman and Wonder Woman, if they appear, are simply going to be in this film to help Superman's cause, as well as every other hero that possibly appears in this film. And because of the plot itself, there's a very natural way to make all of these elements blend together. So personally, to me, as long as the movie has a decent runtime, and to me a decent runtime for this movie would be at least 2.5 hours, because if you are going to have all of these heroes, I do think that you need a little bit more time to balance the story. So yeah, 2.5 to 3 hour runtime for me, and I'm completely fine because I know that James Gunn can handle a plethora of characters in a film because that's what he's done since he's entered the superhero space. That's pretty much his forte. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like it's very refreshing to be able to jump into this universe where the heroes are already established and be able to jump right into the meat and potatoes of everything. As long as these stories are told right and flow together and aren't rushed, there's no con literally whatsoever to doing this. A lot of you guys are just used to the formulaic origin movie, then a sequel, then we get a team up. Origin movie, then a sequel, then a team up. We don't have to follow that formula. In fact, some of the best content that these characters have don't follow that formula. If you look at Batman the Animated Series, we jump into that series and Batman's already established and he's already fighting crime. We don't see his origin. The same thing can be said for a show like Justice League Unlimited, in which a lot of the characters that show up didn't have any backstory, but we just see them. We didn't see the backstory of Green Arrow when we saw him in Justice League Unlimited. He just showed up and we loved the character because he was done well. The same can be said for characters like Wildcat, Vigilante, Black Canary, etc. And the DCU is quite literally taking inspiration from those types of cartoons. So overall, do I think that there's a lot going on with Man of Tomorrow? No, I don't. And as long as the story, again, is executed properly, I don't think that anyone will have this complaint either. So guys, as DC fans, let's just sit back, relax, see what comes out, and wait until the project actually comes out to judge it. And I'm not saying that you can't have your reservations or share your concerns about a project, but at least have those be based in a justified reason. There's just no reason why we should be complaining that Wonder Woman, Batman, and other heroes could potentially appear in Man of Tomorrow when Man of Tomorrow was never intended to be a solo Superman film, nor was it ever intended to be a direct sequel to Superman 2025. And I'm willing to bet that James Gunn clarified that several times on purpose because he probably knew that people would be complaining about this very thing. So please, just let it cook. But with that being said, that is going to wrap it up for this video. If you guys enjoy the content, again, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. It's been K the God, and I'll catch you boys in the next one.